Welcome everyone to another installment of Washington Business Week's Fall Speaker Series. And I want to thank our sponsor, PEMCO, for supporting us in this really valuable content for students and teachers. And please join me in welcoming Theresa Francomacaro, as she is the founder of Why Story Works. And with Theresa, she believes that stories connect us and they help highlight who we are. And as an entrepreneur, she's a learning professional and executive coach, and she mixes simple storytelling techniques with business acumen to spark innovation and sustain growth. Using creative composition tools combined with sales, management, and content delivery design competence have enabled her to mobilize hundreds of individuals, surpass over 22 million in sales quotas, as well as deliver the gold standard in customer service. So we're very fortunate to have Theresa here with us today. Theresa, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Gina and Andrea and Caitlin. I'm so honored to be here and welcome all of you for Washington Business Week's wonderful 100% virtual conference this year. So it is an honor to be here. And I thought what we'd start off with, when I was speaking to Andrea about this session, we were talking about storytelling and how it can help mobilize people and how it can help ground our message so that it's sticky. So every entrepreneur needs to be heard and seen in this very intense climate that we have. So we're going to start off today with a simple storytelling technique on how you can get your brain to start telling stories. So as you can see, we have 3 pictures in front of us today. So this world that we're in is very bizarre, right? There are a lot of new things happening to us. So looking at these 3 pictures in front of us, I'm going to ask each one of the participants, and those of you who are watching in your classroom now, or some of their educators, you can do this activity with your team. You can just put us on pause, right? So you're going to take a look at these 3 photos and say which one of these 3 photos speaks to your new normal and why. And before you do that, you're going to want to introduce yourself. You're going to want to say your name. Hi, my name is, where you are located, and then which one of these photos is your new normal and why. So I'll start off. My name is Theresa Francomacaro, and I am in Shoreline, Washington. I am the chief storyteller at Why Story Works. And the photo that represents my new normal today is the one on the far left, those dancing cupcake girls, right? And the reason for that is because we've all had to pivot, and I myself have had to pivot my business a full 180. So I feel like I'm constantly dancing. And then not to mention the fact that I have been eating way too many cupcakes, it feels like, during this new normal. So that's a little bit about me. So I'll pass the ball now over to Gina, and you can go for it.
Honestly, I was thinking the exact same thing. Weirdly enough, even though it's not current, it reminds me of my childhood and being back to home and really focusing on what's happening in the home with growing up with my family. So kind of that again, just more simple things. Yeah.
So Gina, give us your first and last name, where you're located.
Yeah.
So see what we're doing here? We're doing a story coaching in the moment.
Okay. Right.
And in the moment coaching is going to help us really get active. Yeah. So give us your first and your last name, where you're located, a little bit about your job title. Like I said, it was a chief story, and which one of these photos is you and why. So we're going to have you go one more time. Off you go.
My name is Jenna Post. I live in West Seattle, Washington. I am Director of Operations for Washington Business Week.
Here we go.
And the picture to me is also the cupcakes. Because it reminds me of simpler times and really focusing on the home.
There we go. So we're going to just pause for a minute. Did you see how clear and concise and compelling the second version was? So thank you, Gina, for being willing and open to story coaching in the moment. All right, so we're going to pass the ball now to Andrea. So if you have yourself on mute, Andrea, go ahead and take yourself off of mute. There you go.
All right, there we go. My name's Andrea Kaikala. I'm the executive director of Washington Business Week, and I live in beautiful Buckley, Washington.
Okay.
The picture that represents me, my new normal the most, is probably the third one over the phone and the guy looking at his watch.
Yeah.
Just so much work, so hard to make those connections virtually.
Yes.
So that one is the one that speaks to me the most.
There we go. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you for reminding us that this new normal, we have to have new skills. So thank you for that. All right. So now we're going to pass the ball to Caitlin. So Caitlin, you can take yourself off mute.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Barber, and I'm over in Mercer Island, Washington, and I'm a senior at Mercer Island High School. And I think the picture that resonates the most with me and kind of represents the new normal with COVID is probably also the little guy standing on the telephone, the third image, because I feel like I'm also waiting for this time to end, and I'm waiting for 2021 and hopefully for a COVID vaccine and kind of just trying to be patient, but it's very hard with all these new challenges. So I think
absolutely. Thank you, Caitlin, for your honesty. And yes, I have two daughters, one who's a junior at UW right now and one who's a senior at Shorecrest. And it is so hard to be a young person today. So give yourself a break, and we will, to be continued, keep coming. So bravo. You all have just completed your very first story. Okay, that's it. Seminar's over. No, no. In all seriousness, one quick thing. How did that feel for you? Just one quick word or two quick words. Jenna, Andrea, Caitlin. How did it feel to do that? We'll pass the ball to Caitlin and then we'll reverse it. So go for it, Caitlin. How'd that feel to just say your story?
I feel like it's kind of different in the sense that I'm trying to like piece stuff together still, I guess, because I'm new at the new storytelling.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you. And Andrea?
It felt good to have an image to a reference in my story.
There we go. Yes, a story starter for sure. Jenna?
For me, just the knee-jerk reaction to explain why I thought that was without introducing myself, and then yeah, exactly. But more straightforward when you let me know I should do my intro first and where I'm at. So
there you go. So sometimes it can be stressful, right? I don't know about you all, but sometimes it can be really stressful to be on the spot. And those of you who are going to be out there doing job interviews or looking for passion projects or going to class and having to maybe do a presentation, it can be anxiety provoking. So the idea around stories is that if you can have maybe something easy to start you off, like an image or a thought, it could take you there and then have a structure. So notice I gave you a beginning, a middle, and an end. I gave you very clear direction to get going. And today, this is really about helping you understand how you can use storytelling to your advantage. I started Why Story Works 3 years ago in the middle of a big reorg with my company, and I met this woman. Her name over here is Erna, and she and I met at the National Association of Women MBAs, and she just loved some of the work we were doing and decided that she wanted to help us out. So I wanted to give a shout out to Erna, who helps me make all of my PowerPoints and everything look really beautiful. So that's just a little bit about me. So let's jump straight into this content. So why stories? Why the brain loves stories? Did you know that we are natural born storytellers? In the chat, just tell us in one, maybe just jot down, how do you feel about being a storyteller? Maybe do you feel like thumbs up, thumbs down? Is it easy? Is it hard? Put in there one word, anybody, Caitlin, Andrea, Gina, one word about how you feel about being a storyteller. Let's see. It's hard for Gina. It's intimidating. Yes. And what's another word here? We've got somebody. Okay. It's hard. It's intimidating, and it's tough. Well, let me tell you something. The brain loves stories. We are hardwired for stories. In fact, when you wrap your message in a story, it will stick 22 times faster than facts or data. Also, if you've got a visual to your story, like we've got these photos here, and we started off with the photos in the very first exercise, that will get your brain activated 60,000 times faster. And we've been telling stories for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, Studies show that the brain lights up with stories. The brain is activated 7 times, those regions in the brain, as opposed to just 3 regions in the brain. And last and certainly not least, stories keep us safe. In other words, there is this thing in the brain called the amygdala. So in the chat, thumbs up, thumbs down if you've ever heard of the amygdala. Do you know what the amygdala is? Anybody? Yes, no, maybe so? Have you heard what the amygdala is? Well, you can think of the amygdala this way. You've heard of it briefly. Yes, think of it like the big tape recorder in your brain that says, pay attention. This is really important stuff. Don't forget. So all those years ago, when we were evolving on the Serengeti and our brains were getting activated, we grew as a species and we survived, not because we were the biggest and the strongest, it's because we were the smartest. And that's because the amygdala said, wake up, this is important stuff. And that came from stories. So for example, people might say, don't go drink that water down by the river because it's not going to help you. You're going to get sick and you might die, right? So the stories are activated in the brain to make our messages sticky. So what we're going to take you through today is ways that you, if you really understand the story that you're telling and why you're telling it, you will have much better response in your audience for the stories that you tell. So that's the point of this. It's not about me being, oh, I'm so engaging. It's thinking, what does my audience need? Where are they? And how can I tell a story that's going to help wake up their brain so that they pay attention and listen? Yeah. So who has a question about this? Anybody? Anybody who's got a question? No? Yes? Go ahead. You can.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, we're good. So we're going to move on here. So these are just some basic story stats that you can put in your pocket and file it away. There is so much information that's coming at us. It is bizarre that our brains can even keep up in this age of information. Some say that we are in the 4th industrial revolution. We had the first one many moons ago when we went from being an agricultural society to living in the cities. And then after World War II, we became more of, really getting out there with having lots of things that we created, right? Lots of machines. And then in the 80s, we got into the age of communication and the internet. Well, now here we are in the year 2020, and some say that we are in the 4th industrial revolutions because it is the rise of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Does that make sense? Yeah. Give me a yes, right? So these stories, because there's so much happening, we as human beings are still the creative genius. They haven't quite figured out how to make machines and computers be able to be creative geniuses. They can learn from us, but they still don't know how to do that. And we still, as humans, hold the market on communication. So that's where in today's market, as you're learning to be a professional, if you can master your ability to deliver a clear and consistent message, you are going to stand out above the fray and you are going to be heard amongst all the other people that are out there. So understanding this idea of how to be a great storyteller will really help you have a leg up. Now, looking at this picture right here, how to avoid death by story. What do you think we mean by that? I'm going to ask, let's ask Caitlin to come off of mute. What do you think we mean by death by story? What do you think that is?
I think it's basically saying that you tell a story and you don't hit all the things that makes it captivating, and you don't engage like the audience or the reader. So then the story either gets forgotten or it gets remembered as something that wasn't so great.
Yes, there we go. Gina, Andrea, do you have anything else to add?
For me, I just think sometimes you're just inundated with too much story, too long of a story, and the whole meaning and purpose is lost.
Yes. Andrea, you're nodding. You agree?
Yes. I would say the same thing, where perhaps the story's too long and you just want to leave.
Exactly. I don't know about you, but there are times when someone starts saying, I'm going to tell you about a time when, and then they go way back and you're thinking, where the heck is this story going? And you just feel like you want to jump out of your skin and be like, will you please get to the point? So there are three key things that one wants to remember when telling a story. You want to be real, be relevant, and be brief. So the reality comes in what Caitlin was saying is you kind of want to know who you are. So you got to put yourself out there. So it's a little bit of a risk, yeah? And then just like what Gina and Andrea were saying, sometimes the story can go all over the place. So you got to know where you want to go. You want to know what your end game is. And then you want to keep it really brief, 2 minutes or less. And we'll take you through that story structure in a moment about how to tell a story in 2 minutes or less. But the overriding message here, be real, be relevant, be brief. And by all means, do not say this. To make a long story short. Who here has ever heard somebody say that? Say yes, no, yes, right? And then the story, yeah, of course. And what we know is that whenever you say to make a long story short, it never is short. That is what it is. It's kind of like death because it just goes on and on and on. And that's what people say when they don't know what else to say. So today we're going to show you ways to make it really compelling. And the best way to do this, and I'm just going to move myself over so you can see, we've got some handouts for you too. These are the 5 neurological responses inherent in any good story. And you've got the handouts as well as the bibliography that I attached to the handouts here. And what I realized in all of my years of storytelling, that it was very similar to the emotions that we see. So there are 5 key emotions inherent in any good story. And I liken them to this mnemonic of flee, FLEH. So fear, love, longing, empathy, and action. So if you look here, there are some main emotions that we experience in stories. And the powerful thing about stories is that they activate emotion. And when you activate emotion, then you activate people to do something. Yeah. So the brain thinks, but the story or the actions are the things that the emotions are the things that compel us to action. So let's take a look at each one of these independently. And the idea behind this chart is, if you look, many times people want to feel a certain thing. They want to feel focused, and they are experiencing other things that are taking them away from that. So the idea behind this chart is you have to assess, where is my audience? What do they need? And how can I help them with that? So if we go back to the very beginning of this session where I asked you all to tell a 2-minute story, you may have been a little bit afraid and feeling, oh my God, what does she want me to do? I'm on the spot. And to solve that problem, I needed to focus you. In fact, that's exactly what we did with Gina. We had her start again and we had her refocus so that she could get all of that fear out of her head and she could tell a compelling, quick story. So let's dive into each one of these, shall we? The first one here is the fear factor. So it is very true, and it is done by science. This is compelling info that when we are afraid, we release cortisol. So cortisol is a chemical that gets released in the brain when we feel threatened. And so right now, there are a lot of people in the world with COVID and the pandemic that might be feeling a lot of fear. So our fight, flight, fear response, it could go something like this. When we were many years ago on the Serengeti and we were away from our tribe and we were in alone, we're like, oh my God, the lion is there and he's going to eat me. So that was a natural response. We either had to fight, we had to get away, flight, or we would freeze. So right now, with cortisol coursing through our veins, it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it could help us focus, right? So what we want to manage is how can we keep that cortisol enough at bay? And if we know our audience is feeling a lot of fear, how can we move that cortisol down so that they're not in this panic mode and they can't focus? Who here, and let's just, I'll pause for a second, has gotten lots of insight, or people have said, here's how to manage remote teams, right? Have you had that, right? A lot of that? Yes, no, right? For sure. And I get it. Productivity is something we want. And maybe right now productivity can put itself on hold because we're feeling so much fear, we can't even focus. So that's one thing. So questions around this one. I'm going to pause for a minute. Questions? Okay, let's move on to the next one then. All right. So the next one is feeling, a lot of times we might be feeling lonely right now. And one of the things around story is that people, when you feel lonely, you want to have that connection. So the connection happens when we release dopamine. And that dopamine is a chemical in the brain that gets released when we have that feeling of love. So think about your phone or your likes when you're on social media. You're like, oh, do they like me? Do they like me? Oh, yes, they do, right? So we love that dopamine hit. That is also why a lot of sales and marketing and advertising does a lot around sex, quite honestly, because sex sells. The other thing about dopamine is it can be addicting. Dopamine will stick in your system for about 90 seconds, which is also why I encourage people to be able to tell a story in a very short time period, because you want to activate that brain. So you've also heard possibly the idea of the elevator pitch. Have you heard of the elevator pitch? Yes, I see the heads nodding. The elevator pitch happens, they say, in about 118 seconds. That's the amount of time it takes you to go from the one floor to the next in an elevator. So that's why you want to release it quickly. And that's where dopamine can come into play. So the next emotion we can talk through is this idea of serotonin being released. And sometimes our audiences are feeling despair. And they're feeling, oh my God, this is never going to happen. I'm never going to get there. Maybe in your job search, you think there's so many people out there that are trying to get into this job market. Is there ever going to be a space for me when I haven't even entered the job market? So we want to, if you know that's what your audience is feeling, you're going to want to release a story or tell a story that may release serotonin. And serotonin is like that. Right? You see? It's kind of how I feel after I eat a big bowl of pasta, right? It's that feeling of calm and relax, and that's going to help us feel hopeful. Our next one here, this here is oxytocin. Many times is what people call the empathy hormone, or that feeling of connection. So again, thinking about our new normal, there are a lot of people that are feeling really overwhelmed and depleted and possibly misunderstood. And so they need that empathy. And empathy gets released when we experience oxytocin coursing through our veins. So let's just use the example of a mother with her baby, and let's say she's nursing her child. There is this strong release of oxytocin, and oxytocin is that hormone that lets people say, oh, you're just like me. Oh, you get me. So if you're ever feeling or thinking that your audience is not relating, I do this and I talk through this a lot in the sales funnel for those of you who are going into sales. When you're early on in the sales process, you might want to release or talk through stories that talk about empathy or how you can relate to them, because that will calm your audience down and that will make them think, oh, they get me. They're a lot like me. They understand. So next, and certainly not last, but this is our release of adrenaline. So feeling stuck, feeling angry, feeling entitled. If that's where our audience is, they're going to need a story that's going to activate adrenaline, which will get them to have what we call a CTA, or call to action. You might notice that a lot of times at the end of a seminar, or maybe at the end of this conference, your leaders might say, go forth and conquer. You can do this. You got it. So that's where adrenaline stories will really activate an audience. And you might see adrenaline stories happening at the very end of a seminar. So we're going to pause right here, right now, before we get into how to do it, and see what questions might you have about these 5 neurological responses to story. I'm going to go back here. Whoopsie. So what questions do you have right now about the 5 neurological responses inherent in stories?
I have a quick question. I was wondering if you think, is there one response that's the most compelling?
Okay, so Caitlin is asking about which response do I need to activate? In other words, what is it that I need to talk about? And here's the answer to that. It depends. And why I say that, it's not to be coy. It depends on where your audience is, right? So you have to think about, what is it that I want to activate in my audience? So if I know my audience, or let's say let's just use a job interview, for example. Let's say I know that that hiring manager is wondering if I've got what it takes. You might then pull out an empathy story that relates to their company profile and say, I got what it takes, and I get your mission statement because this is my mission statement. Yeah? Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely about the audience. So
Yes.
thanks.
So you got to think about the audience, and then you're going to pull your story based upon where you want your audience to be. Yeah. Other questions? Gina, Andrea?
Question from students who sent some in that kind of ties into this. How do you become a good storyteller if you're terrified of public speaking?
The number one fear, it's right up there in the top 10 list. I think it's number 3. It's above death. People fear public speaking more than they fear death. Can you believe that? I'm like, what? And so the only answer I can give you to that, Gina, is practice. Practice, 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 practice. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
There you go. So how do you get to be a better storyteller? You practice. Now I can be, I'll be very clear here. I have been practicing and telling stories my whole life. I started telling stories when I was wee high, and I got a master's degree in performance from NYU. I had my own theater company for a while. I've been in sales and marketing, and now I'm helping people tell their best story. So really it's about practice, practice, practice. Any other questions, Andrea?
No, I think Caitlin and Jenna got the 2 great questions that were on my mind.
Okay, so now we're going to scoop forward. We're going to move again, see all these things. We've got our factors. Now you're probably thinking, well, how do I do this, right? How do I tell a compelling 2-minute story? So the first thing we'll do is we're going to take you through this whole thing bit by bit by bit. And just know that what I've done here is I've broken it down from a timing perspective so that you can do this. And when I coach and I teach people storytelling, I use a form that's called the chunk outline. And all of you have that in your handout, in addition to this simple grid. So let's dive in. First thing you want to do in the first 20 to 30 seconds, this again is if you're telling a 2-minute story, is say, where were you? What were you doing? So this is going to land you as a character, and it's also going to make you real. It's also going to set up the setting. So this will help you avoid that death by story trap of going, well, let me tell you about a time when just jump right in. Where were you? What were you doing? And you don't need to get too detailed, but you want to get detailed enough. One of the things I tell my clients is specific is terrific. So what do you think we mean by specific is terrific? What do you think we mean by that, Caitlin? What do you think that means?
I think when details are given and it's very detail oriented, it's more real to people because it's like the
Yeah.
story's coming alive and it's not
Yeah.
this vague story from
Yeah.
I don't know when, but it's like
Right.
you can try and be in their shoes also as well.
There you go. So that's going to activate some of that emotion of the oxytocin to say they're a lot like me. For example, I was doing an executive coaching session with one of my clients who's working to get a C-suite job as a marketer. He's a VP of marketing. And I'm like, all right, well, tell me some of your stories. And he's like, well, when I joined this company and I started helping their leadership team and guiding my direct reports, I was like, so how many direct reports do you have? He said, I had 10. I said, and what were their ages? He goes, well, they were millennials, they were Gen Xers, they were boomers. And so the point of that was, if you can land your audience a little more specific with some of those details, it wasn't just that he was leading a team, it's that he was leading a team that was multi-generational and they had a problem. So what were you doing? He says, well, there was a lot of infighting and there was a lot of backstabbing and we weren't working very well together. So in that very beginning moment, you're setting up the problem. And that's why you say, where were you? What were you doing? Make sense? Questions? All right. So the next piece of this is you move into, this is what we call your inciting incident. Something changes. Boom. So it's like, I'm in this environment where everybody is infighting and nobody is getting along. And I realize that before I can make any of my marketing initiatives stick, I've got to deal with getting this team in alignment. So I start initiating one-on-one coaching sessions and stand-up meetings weekly with my team. So something changes, right? And then what happens as a result? And then what happens until what finally happens? And that's what we call our climax. So what finally happens is the big reveal of, oh my God. And so finally, all of these people are working together and we are getting more done. And this all happened within the first 90 days. So you get a climax there. So the last and final piece of this is the resolution, or why should we care? And why should we care is the moment that matters. In other words, it's what I call, you want to stick the landing. You want to be like Mary Lou Renton, you know, our gymnast, and you want to stick that landing because people remember the beginnings and ends of things. So if you're in a session or you're doing a pitch to, let's say, potential employer, you want to say, so the overriding message here, or the big picture, is I am that team leader that's going to take your people from okay to wow, and I'm excited to do so. So you want to give people the aha or the key message there. All right, so those are the three big chunks. I'm going to pause here for a moment and see if you've got any questions. Who's got a question?
Another one from students.
Yes.
This.
Yes.
I think there's an idea that you can't have a good story if you're young.
Oh,
And it sounds like you've been a great storyteller. You've been storytelling for most of your life.
yeah.
Does everyone have a story, no matter how young they are?
Absolutely. In fact, I find young people tell some of the best stories. And in a moment, we're going to hear a story from Caitlin, and we're going to hear her journey a little bit. The thing that I love about how young people tell stories is they don't have a lot of preconceived notions. They're very real. And they have a lot of passion. And so that's the other thing about stories, is that you want to be really real. You don't want to be too scripted. Sometimes when I'm doing my executive coaching with that example I told you of that VP of marketing I'm working with right now to get a new job for himself, he is so polished, he's so scripted that he wants to have it all buttoned up. And you know, take a look at, let's say, Barack Obama, for example. He is a phenomenal storyteller, and it's as if he's talking off the cuff. And in a way he is, and you've got a real through line there. So young people have a lot of passion, and so you want to tap into that passion with just a little bit of structure. Yeah, thank you for that question. Other questions? All right. So what do you say? Would you like to hear a story? Shall we? Yes, 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 yes. I think so, right? So there is you've got a handout right now, which is what we call the chunk outline. And so you want to have your handout in front of you. I am going to tell you a story. And I am going to model for you. In the world of training, we call this tell, show, do. We're going to tell you how to do it. We're going to show you how to do it. And then we're going to let you do it. So as you listen to my story, look for what is the neurological response I'm seeking? In other words, what emotion am I trying to activate in you as a listener? So that's number one. And number two, what is the through line? Where was I? What was I doing? What changed? What was the climax, and what was the big reveal or the big aha? So that, because we're going to debrief it. All right. So questions before we get started. So what is it that you're looking for, Gina? What's the first thing you're looking for?
Oh gosh, what emotion, your audience, what they want?
Yeah. What emotion? And you've got your grid right in front of you, so you don't have to guess, and there might be multiple emotions. What's another thing you're looking for, Caitlin?
You're looking to like tell the beginning of the story, right? Like the beginning character and setting.
So where was I? What was I doing? Yeah. What's another thing we're looking for, Andrea?
The aha.
Yes, the aha, or the big reveal at the end. And we want to make sure we've got an eye on what the climax is of the story. Okay. So I'm going to get my timer going so you can see if I can really hit the mark with 2 minutes. So I'm never going to ask somebody to do something that I myself can't do. So it's spring 2016, and it is St. Patrick's Day. And I get a call from my sister who lives in Manhattan, and she says, Theresa, I have gone to the St. Patrick's Day parade every single year for the last 17 years, and I don't want to miss this one. My sister is in month 6 of a 9-month cancer diagnosis. She's in stage 4 colon cancer. And I think, you know what? If not now, then when? So when my daughters come home from school, I say, pack a bag, we're going to New York City. So within 24 hours, we're from Seattle to New York City. We arrive and we get to my sister's apartment, and she's got noisemakers and party favors and balloons, and she's got outfits for us all to wear. I think she changed her outfit at least 3 times. So finally we get on the subway, and we get to Central Park, and we're traipsing through the park, and we're eating these delicious nuts, and we finally get to Fifth Avenue. And we see the trumpets playing and the band is coming. And my sister says, this is the best day of my life. And I look at her and I think, oh my God, what would have happened if I didn't go? And so my advice to you is, if you're struggling or you don't know, or you've got so many things coming at you, don't miss those moments that matter most, because you can't get that back. And I'm so excited to say that my sister had a wonderful day, and it's a moment that we all treasure. And so in this world of so many competing realities, take that moment to spend time with family, because it will bring dividends beyond your wildest dreams. All right. So that's my story. And that was just about, I don't know, it was 2 seconds less than 2 minutes. So I've told that story a lot of times over the years, and I have adjusted it. We're going to pause for a minute, and we're going to debrief that story. And then we're going to have the opportunity to hear a story from Caitlin, and then we'll debrief that one, and then we'll take some questions. Okay? So first off, where was I? What was I doing, Gina? Where was I?
You were in Seattle, I remember that part, and you were thinking of your sister, and it was St. Patrick's Day coming up, and she loves to go to the parade.
Yep. So what changed, Caitlin? What was the big change? What happened, and then what changed, and what changed, and what changed?
I thought the plot was when you went to New York City, and then you went to your sister's apartment, and then you got to see her, and then you were walking on Fifth Avenue, I think you said, and you were talking to her, and I thought that was the plot.
Yeah. So what was the big climax, Andrea? What do you think? Where do you feel the big climax was?
The best day of her life, and
There
to
you
not
go.
miss little moments.
There you go. So when my sister said, this is the best day of my life. So that's your climax, right? And then what was the resolution? What was the big reveal? Why should we care? What was the message, Caitlin?
The message was like treasure the moments with your family and like always go, I guess, always be there for your family and
Yeah.
don't doubt that
There you
like
go.
you're gonna regret it if you don't go.
Yeah, no regrets. Don't live with regrets. So what emotions, we're going to ask all three of you, what emotions were activated for you all? What did you feel? All right, I'll ask one at a time. Gina, what emotion? You've got your grid: fear, love, longing, empathy, hope. What did you feel?
Definitely empathy.
Empathy for sure. Anyone else? Empathy? Yes.
Definitely love for your sister.
Yes, love for my sister. Anything else, Caitlin?
I kind of felt a little bit of like hope and despair, like sort of feel a little bit helpless, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. So that trajectory. So notice here, it's not always just one emotion, right? It's definitely an empathy story. That's the overriding emotion. And there's love that gets activated. There's hope that we want to see. So when you can tap into multiple emotions, then you're like, this story really resonates. This is what I'm going to put in my tool belt that I'm going to pull out and I'm going to use when I need to. Also know that this story, while it happened to me in 2016, it's an older story. It's also incredibly relevant because then I make it relevant to today. So that's another key thing. You want to take moments that matter to you, and you want to make sure that you have what is called stake in that moment. So stories that are great stories need to have stakes. Okay. So any other questions before we move into hearing a story? All right. So Caitlin, we're going to give you a moment to gather your thoughts. And in fact, all of you can do this. You've got the chunk outline right there in front of you. You can use that chunk outline. We're going to give you about a minute or two to craft a story for yourself. Your story needs to have emotion. So you want to think about, what is my emotional arc? My story was around empathy. And then you want to think, where was I? What was I doing? You're going to have a change. You have a couple of key points, no more than maybe 3 or so specific details. And then you want to wrap it all up in why it matters. In other words, my advice to you, or the overriding message, or what you get from this is, okay? So we're going to give you a little bit of time to think this through. Not too much. How much time do you think you need, Caitlin?
I've been thinking about it in the back of my head the whole time. So
she's been thinking about it the whole time. I hope it hasn't been too much where you're paranoid now. I think it's okay. No. Okay. So we've got a moment for you. You ready? Yeah. And you've got your chunk outline. You can jot some notes down. And here's what's going to happen, Caitlin. I'm going to set a timer. Okay. And I may or may not interrupt you. This is what we call compassionate story coaching in the moment. So Gina, what do you think the value is of coaching somebody in the moment when they're telling a story or they're giving a presentation?
I think it's fresh, it's relevant. It'll help them remember.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And we could also course correct right then and there if we need to, right? So that's part of what I try to do, is get in there if we need to, kind of get the story going in the direction that's going to activate some of those motions and get us really specific. Okay. So that may or may not happen, Caitlin. We'll see. So Gina and Andrea, our job is to look for the moments that matter. So just like we debriefed my story, we're going to debrief Caitlin's story. So where was she? What was she doing? What changed? What were some of the things that happened? What was the climax? And then why does it matter? And what were some of those emotions? Okay. So you all know what you're supposed to do. Any questions about what we're doing?
Actually, before you get started, I want to, Caitlin, I did not introduce you to our audience.
Oh, yes.
Caitlin is she has been an alumni with us. She was with us at Seattle University last year on a traditional campus, and she was pivotal to our success during the inaugural virtual program as an intern. And you've just been really helpful and so great, Caitlin, and you're here today and you're going to share a story. And I just wanted to say how proud of we are of you, and thank you for being here.
Yes, and thank you for volunteering to do this. This is not easy, and hopefully you've got enough things in your tool belt now, and you've got tremendous support. So we are all here rooting for you. So whenever you start speaking, I'll start the timer, okay?
Okay, thank you so much. So today I was kind of going to talk about how...
Okay, so we're going to stop you right there. We're going to stop you right there. See what she's doing? So today I'm going to tell you about a time when, yeah? So we're going to freeze. You're just going to jump straight in.
Okay.
And so give yourself quiet. Whenever you're ready, you say it is and tell us what year it is or where you were, what were you doing? So you take the stage, you set us up.
Okay. So my grandparents are actually from South Africa, and my parents grew up there too. So we've often go back to visit yearly. And when we go back to visit, we often go volunteer at a shelter there for abused women and abandoned children. And when I went to go visit there one day, we've been many times, so I clearly remember one day when we were going in for one of the kids' birthday parties, and we were going to have like a little pass the parcel event for them, because obviously they don't have parents and they're obviously wanting an activity to celebrate their birthday. So we went in there one day, and I just remember there was like dirt all over the floor, and to think that these kids didn't have a home to go home to, and they didn't have family, and they didn't have like that love, and they were obviously being supported by this amazing woman named Aggie who ran the shelter.
So Caitlin, what changed for you? What changed?
So what changed for me is like when I went there, I was like, I want to make a change. Like I want to devote my life, and I want to help now in my community in Seattle, and also educate myself more about the infrastructures that are, like allow for inequality in places like South Africa. So in my own community, I volunteered at Angeline Shelter, which is a shelter for homeless women in Seattle. And in my community, I initiated a drive for feminine hygiene products. And together we fundraised 10,000 tampons and pads for the homeless women at Angeline. So that was a great moment for our community to be able to come together for like the greater good and help those homeless women.
Bring us home. What's the big message? What's the big takeaway you want us to get?
I think the big takeaway from this is that you need to be compassionate towards everyone, and to always give more than you can get, because obviously everyone's always going to be feeling like they're not getting enough. But
okay, so Caitlin, we're going to reset this. We're going to reset the ending. You're going to stick the landing, okay? You got 20 seconds. You're going to say, so for me, you know, what that moment in South Africa, when I was on that dirt floor, I realized that, and then you said a lot, and that's why today I am so passionate about, you see where we're going here? Yeah.
Okay.
You got it?
So today, that's why I'm so passionate about gender equality, and I've started clubs at my high school about that, and I've taken on United Nations webinars too to educate myself about the global inequality.
So what's your advice to us? What's your advice to us?
My advice to everyone is to get out there and make a difference in your community, and don't think it's not possible, because if you rally your people around you, you're a much stronger force than you are alone. Of course, you can't do everything by yourself.
Okay, so we're going to pause. This is so awesome. So we're going to just do that last part one more time. It's what we call, my advice to you is get out there, volunteer, and the benefit will be blah, blah, okay? So off you go. Very last time. My advice to you is?
My advice to you is get out there, make a difference in your community, and rally your members in your community as well, and bring them along you to make a difference.
And the benefit will be?
The benefit will be the greater good of society, because people will have been helped. Served.
Okay. So we're going to pause. So we're going to do that last part one more time. And I know I'm really pressuring you because you're the example for us. So this very last piece is get out there, volunteer, do that for the community, and the benefit will be, how did you feel, right? You'll feel more connected. You'll feel, right? Because you got to remember that emotional arc, right? So we're just going to do that last thing. So my advice to you, if any of you are worried or concerned about, get out there, do this, and then the benefit will be this. Off you go. One last time.
My advice to you is to get out there, rally your community members, and make
And the
a
benefit will be?
And the benefit will be feelings of gratitude for your community and new connections with different people.
That's it. That's it. That's it. Oh my God. Okay. So bravo, Caitlin. Bravo. So how did that feel?
Hard.
Yes. Yes.
For the end, because I'm often used to writing these stories for like
Yes.
applications. So I'm not really I don't have any habit of the speaking the end and like giving the moral resolution.
You did it though. You did it, right? And thinking about your audience, let's just imagine that you had an audience full of young people that are wanting to volunteer. Let's say maybe they want to get out there and join the Peace Corps or what have you. You gave them a real call to action about why they might want to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what, let's just debrief a little bit, Gina and Andrea. Where was she? What was she doing?
Your family is from South Africa and you go back.
So she was in South Africa and she got this moment of being on this dirt floor. That really resonated, that dirt floor, by the way. That's one specific piece of the architecture that you put in there, or the environment, that we could feel. You had an emotional response to feeling. What changed, Andrea? What was the big change for her?
Her bringing her service back to the Seattle area.
Yes, yes, that was the big reveal. And what was the big overriding message, Caitlin, that you wanted people to get?
That you can go out there and make a difference with your community members, and that
Yes,
you'll be rewarded with feelings of gratitude, knowing
there
that
you go.
help people.
Yeah, so when you give to others, you really give to yourself too, right? And that helping the community helps you. Yeah. I love it. So look at you, you storyteller, you, right? So at this point, this is where I want to just share with you that you all know how to do this. We are natural born storytellers. We have got it. And this is a little review of the chunk outline, which all of you had the handout for. And when we're able to activate these moments that matter, they're going to matter to our audience, and you're going to get the results that you're looking for. So, you know, this is my passion. I've been telling stories my whole life, and I love it. There's nothing better than hearing a good story or telling a good story. And we're all natural born storytellers. Think about what we just did in this 30-40-minute seminar. Is you all, every single one of you told a story in the very beginning. And then we had the opportunity to learn some of basic story structure. And then we also heard a very engaging story from Caitlin about her why. So as you move forward in your process and you're moving towards your vision for yourself, think about those moments that matter to you. And think about ways that you can bundle those moments, because when they matter to you, they're going to matter to your audience. And that's why story works. So if any of you are interested in more detailed dive, one-on-one coaching, group facilitation, I do a lot of that. Find me at www.whystoryworks.com. If you mention this seminar, you can get 10% off of any service you purchase. And if you've got a story that you're working on and you're struggling and you're just not quite sure how to do it, just reach out to me. I'd love to help. It's my passion.
Thank you so much, Theresa. This was engaging. I learned a lot about storytelling. I know as a student here, Caitlin, you need to jet to school. So if you need to leave, if you have some time, Theresa, just a couple of questions from our students. Okay.
Absolutely. I'd love to stay. Caitlin, bravo. Thank you so much for being our participant and being a willing participant and jumping right out there. Telling stories is not easy, and it can be done if you know where you want to go. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a great opportunity to improve my public speaking skills and give me a little bit more boost confidence when I'm writing essays and also speaking in front of people.
There you go. You got this. You got this. Just tap into that emotion and get specific, and remember where you want your audience to go, right?
Right. Yeah. And the ending and there has to be like a moral and a theme. Like you
want to stick the landing. You got to have a real call to action at the end. What did you want me to get? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So I don't know how you want to work the rest of this. Do you want to stop the screen share and just do Q&A? You want to keep the screen share? It's up to you.
You can keep it up so everyone has your information.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
All right, just
Very
a
good.
couple questions for you, Theresa. Thank you again. That was great.
Oh, my pleasure.
So a lot of our students really want to know kind of the back end of how people become in their professions and what they did. And one of them that came up was, what advice would you give to students who want to start their own consulting business?
It's a lot of times people call it a side hustle, right? So I can tell you this. I started out many years ago. I was in the theater, and I got my undergraduate in theater and my master's degree in performance. And anybody who knows anything about people in the arts, they've always got a side hustle, right? So my side hustle was always in sales. I was always selling something. And I figured there's always somebody somewhere that's going to want to buy something from somebody at some time. So today, the difference is I'm helping people sell themselves as opposed to selling a product. So I would say have your passion and make sure that it's in alignment with who you are and what you value, because then you'll do it no matter what. And it won't matter how much money you make. You'll do it for nothing, right? And hopefully one day you'll make some money at it, but you have to be in alignment with what it is you're passionate about.
Also, as an entrepreneur, is there anything in your career that was non-negotiable for you, either personally or professionally?
Well, when you say non-negotiable, what does that mean exactly? What are you trying? I'm not quite sure I understand the question. So
I think what they were intending to mean is something that maybe you wouldn't jeopardize time with family over your career, or you would never.
Got it. Yeah. So that reminds me, I was working for a company, and this was about 3 years ago, right before I leaped into Why Story Works. And it was a Fortune 500 company, and they were going through tremendous reorg, and it was an incredibly stressful environment. And in that 4.5 years I was there, I think I had 3 or 4 job titles, and I had a very disenfranchised team that had only a 30% job approval rating. So needless to say, I was working feverishly, overtime, all the time, and I was doing so many different things, and I was really stressed out. And so I remember somebody said to me, one day, this will be a job you once had. So no job is worth the stress of your health. And so while maybe today I don't have a 401k from my employer, or health benefits from my employer, or a steady paycheck from my employer, what I do have from my own employment is more peace of mind and flexibility and love for what I do. I love this, as you may be able to assess from this workshop. It's a passion. So you've got to find that moment when you can say enough is enough. I can't live in this stress. And if you follow your heart and you do what you love and you know what your values are, you're never going to work a day in your life. But that's not to say that you don't have stressful times. You just have to be able to balance it. But no job is worth losing sleep or so much stress that you can't operate.
All right, the last question for you, and Caitlin kind of touched on this, and I would agree. Do you have to be a good writer to be a good storyteller?
I would say yes and no. So you have to be able to conjure the moments that matter for you. So whatever it takes, like we just did in the very beginning, we did some photos, right? So that you were able to find some moments that you could speak to. So if you have a hard time organizing, you want to get as much help as you can through a chunk outline, or through research, or through understanding basic story structure. And then you got to put your stamp on it. So writing is important, yes, because it helps you get a through line, and you don't want it to be 100% scripted. That is a pure recipe for death by story. So you want to understand your story so that you can bring it to life, and that may happen through the writing process, and it may not.
Well, that is all I have for you. Again, Theresa, thank you. That was amazing. I hope the students really enjoy this learning experience. And you guys, if you want to learn more, we have Theresa's website. I also want to thank, again, PEMCO for sponsoring our sessions, and our other panelists, Andrea Kikala, our executive director. Again, Theresa, thank you so much for everything and all your information.
Thank you so much. And there in the handouts, there's also the chunk outline, but there's also a detailed bibliography. I did not make all of this up. I did a lot of research around it, and I also put my own stamp on it. So just know that your story is your own. You get to decide. That's the beauty of storytelling. It's ours. So you don't have to have anyone else write your story for you. You're in the driver's seat with that. So enjoy storytelling, enjoy your own story. And I'll leave you with this final thought is that everybody's got a story. It just needs coaxing to the surface. So get out there, tell your story, share your story, because our stories are what connect us and what show people what we value and make us human. That's why story works.
Thank you, Theresa. Amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.